take you to the south side.
Of?
Chicago?
Yes.
Oh.
You might know some of these guys because at one point you were a White Sox. What year were you a White Sox?
18. No, 17.
Maybe you're way too old for this. All right.
Thanks.
I was looking at a list here, and all of a sudden, over the last week, starting pitching has become a major priority for the Rangers, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I would.
So I was looking at lists now of potential. As 2-3 weeks ago, we weren't really thinking too much
Bullpen or
about
bust,
trading
right?
for
Yeah.
a starting pitcher because you're like, well, Jacob deGrom's coming back. We might have to ease him into it, but possibly he could be, good to go for the playoffs and lead your. Well, now he's not. And now we have Martin Perez not pitching very well. Dane Dunning isn't pitching very well. It doesn't mean they're going to keep pitching the way they're pitching. They're just, you start looking at it going, hey, this is a little bit of an issue now for the Texas Rangers. And this is a now team. Everybody isn't past their prime on this team. They're pretty much in their prime.
Yep.
There's only a few guys on this team that are like, hey, man, I could see them really contributing to the Rangers 5 years from now. This is a now team. Most of the guys that are contributing are around 30 years old. So it's time to go for it now. And so I was looking at this, and help me out if you guys like this candidate.
Okay.
He's kind of maybe the prime trade candidate for a starting pitcher that we know will get traded. Lucas Giolito.
Okay.
For the Chicago White Sox. Now, he is a free agent at the end of the year, and that's why the White Sox most likely will trade him because they're not going to give him a 9-figure contract. They're saying there's a good chance that he gets kind of a 5-year $100 million or a 5-year $125 million contract, somewhere between $20 and $25 million per year on a longer term deal. And the White Sox are probably not in the market to do that with Lucas Giolito. So as you're kind of looking him up.
Well, can I just tell you straight away, one of the things that I really love about this, because this might be what you need now more than ever, that dude is super consistent. He makes just about all his starts.
Yeah.
And I know that's not the lone thing is he'll show up, but he also puts together good numbers. I know last season was not his best, but he puts up good numbers and he makes his start. I'm interested.
So the one thing about Lucas Giolito, if just reading here about his being a trade candidate, it says Giolito's game has always been about verticality, mixing elevated heaters and changeups to keep batters off balance. His new slider featuring greater downward break has fit in beautifully and has so far served as his top bat missing pitch. It's to be seen what kind of contract Giolito fetches this winter. But we're not optimistic the White Sox would be in the running. So it kind of then gets into more contract situation because he is a free agent. So I'm thinking this, guys, as I know that if you're listening to the post-game show when Jared Sandler is talking, he is bringing up Dylan Cease a lot. He is in this article, but it also says in this article, it's unclear how deep the White Sox are willing to push into a rebuild this summer. For that reason and others, Cease appears more of an off-season trade candidate than a trade candidate at the trade deadline. So yes, Dylan Cease is a little bit better than Giolito. Maybe you could say he's a lot better, but he is better. But it looks like Giolito is the guy to possibly get from the White Sox. The other thing that intrigues me is you can pair him up with Joe Kelly. So you can do now. I know that Giolito is not Cliff Lee, and he's not Cole Hamels. Cole Hamels at the time you paired up, and you got a relief pitcher. Why am I Diekman? Thank you. In the trade. So what if you could? And I don't know how much it would cost you, but it wouldn't seem to be an arm and a leg. I don't think you're giving Evan Carter in this deal. I don't know if you're giving Owen White, who we just saw pitch last night's game, but you might have to choose between Owen White and Jack Leiter. One of those guys will probably have to be traded to make this team a lot better. So just so people understand this, you're probably not keeping Owen White and Jack Leiter at this deadline if you want this team to go for it.
And Owen White is theoretically closer. I know they were both in AA, but it feels like Owen White is closer.
Yeah.
Does that impact your decision at all? Or you're like, we're close enough that whoever's got the higher ceiling is who I want to keep? Because I don't know who has the higher ceiling.
I don't know either.
Maybe not though. Again, obviously you want to try and keep the high ceiling guys. I get that. But this year it matters more right now.
You're right.
So in the process of it, I'm willing to part with those things that have high ceilings.
Now,
because this year matters the most.
And just so when people say, well, I'd just rather trade Cole Winn, or well, that ain't happening.
Yeah,
I'd rather trade whoever. Like, it's not happening, because here in the article, it does say potential fits: Astros, Phillies, Dodgers. So just understand that when you, let's say, want Lucas Giolito, you are going to have major competition, even possibly in division competition. And I'll say this, if the Angels keep playing this way, I think the Angels will be in the mix for a starting pitcher too.
So you have to not be selling, they're going to be buying.
I do think the Angels will be buying. So I think that you can win the Lucas Giolito battle, but understand that Owen White or Jack Leiter will have to be included in the package to start off the conversation. Because if you go to the White Sox and you say, here's Luis Angel Acuna, and let's just say Owen White, since you just saw him pitch last night, I think all of a sudden the White Sox are really interested in your package, and they will look at Giolito and a guy like Joe Kelly and go, look, we're willing to package these two guys since you're willing to give us those two prospects. You're probably going to have to add now, not top 10 prospects, but you're probably going to have to look at kind of prospects 10 through 15, add one of those guys, 16 through 20, add one of those guys, and you have yourself a trade. But I was just wanting to throw out a name that maybe not a lot of people are thinking about right now that could really help out your team. Now, Giolito, I'll ask this question, not that I'm following him pitching a lot, but looking at his numbers, I think he falls into your number 3 pitcher category.
I would say so, yeah.
That's a damn good number 3 as well.
Yes, yeah. Evaldi, Gray, and then Giolito, and that's your staff. Now, if you don't want a righty, if you're like, we want a lefty. Now, you do have 2 lefties in your rotation, but I think of right now, I don't know this, but I just wonder if the Rangers are going, I just don't know if Martin Perez and Andrew Heaney are starting playoff pitchers. Not that they can't help you out of the pen, especially Heaney with his swing and miss capability. But I just wonder if they go, well, you know, it'd be nice is to pair a left-hander with these 2 guys.
Okay.
And this is where I bring up the name Eduardo Rodriguez. He is with the Tigers. And it does say this about Eduardo Rodriguez. The Tigers, because they're in such a weak division, are technically a good week away from being in first place.
Okay.
So that is what makes trading for Tigers right now maybe a little bit more difficult, is that the Tigers might look at it and go, hey, if we win 84 games, we might win this division and have home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. So it says that you kind of have to wonder what the availability is of him. He has 3 years and $49 million left on his contract. I think that's somewhat doable.
Deal, actually,
and here's what you have to remember. Jacob deGrom isn't pitching next year. I know what he said in his press conference, but most likely the Rangers are going to look at it and go, we'd rather give you 20 months to be ready for your last 3 years of your contract than force you to, I'm not saying force you to pitch, but go, all right, you're pitching in August and September. Because if there's a major setback, and let's look at Jacob deGrom's career, there could be a major setback that you would go, oh my God, just to push him for a 6-week period to see if he could be ready for the playoffs, we just possibly hurt him for the last 3 years of his $100+ million contract.
Does Eduardo coming back from injury cause any concern, or does that make him easier to grab? Because he still probably won't be good to go until maybe beginning of July.
Okay.
What I'm hearing.
And that's where you would probably do this. You would not trade for him now. You would want to see him make 3 starts.
3 is the magic number?
I think so, Derek. What would you say? If you were trying to scout a guy and you're trying to trade for a guy to help you make the playoffs, win in the playoffs, how many times would you want to see him pitch coming off of injury to know he's going to be the guy that we know he's going to help us because he's good to go?
I'd say at least the small sample, like you said, 3 starts is plenty. That's going to give me enough information to see how healthy he is, how's his arm holding up, and by that time he's built up to at least go, I would say 5 to 6 innings. So when we do get him, we can still continue to build him up to get into the later in the game, 7, 8, whatever.
And he has pitched this year. It's just right now.
Yes.
Finger or something.
Everybody goes through streaks. My last kind of Rangers question for you is, how concerned are you guys about Adolis Garcia?
I am.
I'm not concerned at all about Simeon, just to give you an idea. I bring up Garcia because there's a little bit in the back of my head going, and he had a good year.
About the second half of 21. That
yeah, and I don't think
bad.
he'll be like that. But I'm just wondering, when he's come up to the plate recently, I haven't just felt as confident about his at bats recently.
I think honestly, and this could totally turn out to be wrong, I think he's to the point with me where he's earned the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying he's Simeon and that benefit of the doubt, but I was worried last year because I was worried that he would run into the same lull that he did for a good chunk of the back half of 21, and he didn't. So I think I'm willing to ride it out.
All right. Last 5 games. 0 for 5, 1 for 5, 0 for 3, 1 for 4, 0 for 3.
How many strikeouts does he have in those games?
2, 4, 5, 7, 9.
9 strikeouts.
8
8 strikeouts in 5 games.
And Mike, when it comes to that, this small sample size, obviously, but I do wonder how much that correlates with the conversation that we've had about teams adjusting to the way the Rangers hit. The Rangers were feasting on fastballs early in the season. Why? Because guys are trying to figure out their fastballs early in the season. Yeah. Now guys are making adjustments based on what they've seen of teams. Rangers have to make an adjustment. So I'm more willing to wait until the team makes an adjustment to that. Maybe that is the situation. Maybe they are saying, they're treating us a little differently on first pitch rather than just going fastball on us. So maybe we need to kind of come back to that. So I'm willing to give it a little bit of time, but
I'm with you.
He's a huge piece to the success of this team because when he's hot, everybody else is too. Yeah. So
that's Mike Lexi.